The snow had been falling for 3 years without stopping. 3 years of white silence, of frozen fields where wheat once grew, of children who'd never seen spring. 3 years of watching his kingdom die one frozen breath at a time. Before we go into the story, click the subscriber button and the likes button, because tomorrow I have more story for you. Prince Pedro pushed through another snowdrift in the whispering forest, his sword heavy in his hand, his breath forming clouds in the bitter air. Behind him, 5 of his best soldiers trudged through the endless white, their faces grim behind frost-covered beards. They'd been hunting for weeks, following whispers and traces of dark magic that led deeper into the cursed woodland. Somewhere in this frozen hell was Morgana the Forbidden, the sorcerer who'd stolen the Heart of Light, the sacred crystal that had kept Valdoria alive for 1,000 years. Without it, the eternal winter had come, swift and merciless. Crops withered beneath ice. Livestock froze in their pens. The old and weak simply didn't wake up one morning, their bodies discovered stiff and blue beneath thin blankets. Pedro had watched it all from his castle windows, had heard the reports of villages going dark, one by one, as people abandoned their homes to seek warmth in the crowded capital, had seen his own breath fog in the throne room despite the roaring fires. The Heart of Light wasn't just magic, it was life itself, woven into the very foundation of the kingdom. And Morgana had taken it. "My prince," Captain Aldrich called from behind, his voice rough with cold. "The tracks are fresh here. She can't be far." Pedro knelt beside the disturbed snow. Dark stains marked the pristine white, blood, still liquid despite the freezing air. But it shimmered with an unnatural iridescence, the telltale sign of residual magic. She was wounded. After 3 years of hunting, of following false trails and dead ends, of arriving at abandoned camps just hours too late, they'd finally caught up to her. "Spread out," Pedro ordered, rising. "She's dangerous even injured. Don't give her a clear line of sight for her magic." The soldiers obeyed, fanning out through the ancient oaks. Pedro moved forward, following the blood trail, his heart pounding with 3 years of pent-up fury and grief. This woman had destroyed his kingdom, had made orphans of children widows of wives, had taken everything his father had built and buried it beneath ice and snow. He would end her today. The trail led to a massive oak, its branches twisted and bare, reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. And there at its base she lay. Pedro stopped, his breath catching in his throat. This wasn't the powerful sorcerer from the legends. The stories painted Morgana as a towering figure of darkness, eyes like black pits, magic crackling around her like storm clouds. They said she could freeze a man's blood with a glance, could call down blizzards with a whisper, could shatter stone with the flick of her wrist. The woman in the snow looked nothing like that. She was small, her dark robe spread around her like the broken wings of a fallen bird. Her skin, which Pedro had expected to be corpse-pale, still held a hint of olive warmth beneath the frost that was spreading across her features. Her long black hair fanned out across the white snow, and where it touched the ground, delicate ice crystals bloomed like flowers. But it was her chest that made Pedro's hands tighten on his sword hilt. Where her heart should be, there was a hollow of crystalline ice. Blue, pulsing with weak light, spreading slowly through her veins like frozen lightning beneath her skin. The ice wasn't attacking her from outside, it was consuming her from within, replacing her living flesh with frozen death inch by terrible inch. She was dying, and her own magic was killing her. "Found you," she whispered, her eyes fluttering open. They weren't black. They were silver like moonlight on snow, and they fixed on Pedro with an expression that wasn't fear or hatred. It was almost relief. "The prince who hunts monsters." Pedro raised his sword, but his hand trembled. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, the final confrontation, the clash of steel and magic, the moment he'd avenge his kingdom and restore the Heart of Light. He'd imagined her fighting back, defiant to the end. He hadn't imagined her dying in the snow alone, with ice spreading through her chest like poison. "Where is it?" he demanded, his voice rougher than he intended. "Where's the Heart of Light?" She laughed, a broken, bitter sound that turned into a cough. Dark blood flecked her pale lips. "You still don't understand. You stole it." The words came out as a roar, 3 years of grief and rage finally breaking free. "You curse my kingdom. People are dying. Children are starving. All because you protected." She gasped, her back arching as another wave of ice spread through her veins. "I protected it from him." Pedro froze. "From who?" But before she could answer, her eyes rolled back, and the ice in her chest spread another inch toward her heart. Her breathing became shallow, labored. Minutes, Pedro realized with a jolt of shock. She had minutes left, maybe less. Behind him, his soldiers emerged from the trees, swords drawn. "My prince," Captain Aldrich said carefully. "The witch. Should we—" "She's dying," Pedro interrupted, still staring at Morgana's face. At the pain etched in every line, at the way her fingers clawed weakly at the snow, as if trying to hold on to life itself. "Good," one of the younger soldiers muttered. "After what she did to us." Pedro looked at the woman he'd been taught to hate, the enemy he'd sworn to kill, the monster responsible for 3 years of suffering. He saw her chest rising and falling in rapid, desperate breaths. Saw the ice crawling across her collarbone, reaching for her throat. Saw her silver eyes, half open, looking at something far away, or perhaps at nothing at all. And he saw something he'd never expected to see in a forbidden sorcerer's dying face. Truth. It hit him like a physical blow. This woman, dying alone, her magic consuming her, had whispered one word that changed everything. Protected. Not stole. Not took. Protected. From him. Someone else. Someone she'd been running from. Someone who— Pedro's mind raced. 3 years ago, the heart had vanished from its sanctuary in the dead of night. The guards had been found with their throats slit, no magical trace left behind. Only one person could have bypassed the magical wards, someone with deep knowledge of the ancient protections. Someone from inside the court. And when they discovered the heart was gone, who had immediately named Morgana as the thief, who had provided the evidence of her dark magic at the scene, who had encouraged Pedro in his grief and rage after his father's death to hunt her down without question. Lord Erebus, his father's most trusted advisor, the man who'd helped raise Pedro after his mother died, the man who'd been by Pedro's side for 3 years, helping coordinate the hunt, providing resources, offering counsel. The man who made sure Pedro would kill the only person who could tell the truth. "My prince." Captain Aldrich's voice was uncertain now. "Your orders." Pedro looked at his soldiers. Good men, loyal men, who'd followed him for 3 years through ice and snow. Men who deserved to see their families again, to return to a kingdom free from winter's curse. Men who trusted him to make the right choice. He looked at Morgana, her life bleeding away into the snow. And Prince Pedro made a choice that would change everything. He dropped his sword. The blade landed in the snow with a soft thump that seemed impossibly loud in the frozen silence. "My prince." Aldrich stepped forward, alarm in his voice. "What are you?" "She's not the enemy," Pedro said quietly. Then, louder, with a conviction he didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore, "She's not the enemy." He dropped to his knees beside Morgana, pulling off his heavy cloak. His soldiers stared in shock as he wrapped it around her shaking form, his hands moving with sudden urgency. Her skin was ice-cold beneath his fingers, and he could feel the unnatural chill of the curse spreading through her. "Don't you dare die yet," he said fiercely, meeting those silver eyes as they fluttered open again. "Not until you tell me everything. Do you hear me? Everything. You should let me." She whispered, "No." Pedro slid his arms beneath her, lifting her as carefully as he could. She weighed almost nothing, as if the curse was consuming her substance along with her life. "There's a cave system 1/2 mile west. We passed it yesterday." "My prince, you can't be serious." Aldrich grabbed his arm. "She's the witch. She cursed us. She said she was protecting the heart. From someone." Pedro met his captain's eyes. "What if she's telling the truth? What if we've been hunting the wrong person? And if she's lying? If this is a trick? Then she'll die anyway, and we'll have lost nothing. But if she's telling the truth..." Pedro's jaw tightened. "Then we've wasted 3 years hunting a victim, while the real enemy sits in our court, laughing at us." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. One of them, a young man named Garrett who'd lost his sister to the cold, stepped forward, his hand on his sword. "You're committing treason," Garrett said, his voice shaking. "Saving the witch. Defying the king's order." "I am the king's order," Pedro said quietly. "My father's last words to me were, 'Find the truth, not just the heart.' I thought I knew what that meant. Maybe I was wrong." He turned toward the west, Morgana's dying form cradled against his chest, his own cloak trailing in the snow behind them. "You don't have to follow me," he said to his men. "Go back to the castle. Tell them I'm tracking her deeper into the forest. Buy me 3 days." "And then what?" Aldrich demanded. "Then I'll know if I just saved my kingdom's last hope." Pedro looked down at Morgana's face, at the ice spreading across her cheek like frost on a window. "Or if I just committed the biggest mistake of my life." Behind them, in the shadows of the frozen forest where the ancient oaks grew thick and dark, a figure in black robes watched. A raven perched on his shoulder, its eyes gleaming with unnatural intelligence. Lord Erebus smiled beneath his hood. The prince was more resourceful than expected, but it didn't matter. The witch would be dead by morning, and Pedro would have no proof, no allies, no way to challenge the truth Erebus had so carefully constructed. The raven cawed once, and both vanished into shadow, leaving only disturbed snow to mark where they'd stood. In Pedro's arms, Morgana's eyes closed. But just before she slipped into unconsciousness, she whispered 3 words that would haunt him. "He's watching us." The cave was barely more than a crack in the hillside, but went deep enough to block the wind and the watching eyes of the forest. Pedro laid Morgana on his cloak near the back wall, then spent precious minutes gathering what dry wood he could find to build a fire. His hands shook, from cold or from the weight of what he'd just done, he wasn't sure. His soldiers had left an hour ago, their faces masks of confusion and disapproval. Only Captain Aldrich had lingered, pressing a pack of supplies into Pedro's hands before mounting his horse. 3 days, my prince," he'd said. "Then I'll have to tell the court the truth." "I know. Thank you, old friend." Now alone in the cave with the woman he'd hunted for 3 years, Pedro finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his choice. He defied his orders, abandoned his men, saved the enemy his entire kingdom wanted dead. If he was wrong, if this was a trick, if Morgana was the villain everyone said she was, he'd just destroyed everything he'd worked for. His crown, his honor, his father's legacy. The fire caught, flames licking at the dry wood. Weak orange light filled the cave, pushing back the shadows. Pedro turned to check on Morgana, and his breath caught. In the firelight, he could see the extent of the curse. The ice had spread further during the journey, covering half her chest now, creeping up her throat and down her arms. Her veins glowed blue beneath her skin, a spiderweb of frozen magic slowly replacing her living blood. But was her face that struck him. Even dying, even cursed, she was beautiful in a way the stories had never mentioned. They'd painted her as a hag, a monster, something barely human. But the woman before him looked young. Maybe his own age, perhaps a year or two older. Her features were delicate, aristocratic even, and her long dark hair spread around her like a corona of shadow. She looked like someone who'd once smiled easily, who'd once been loved. "Stop staring," she whispered without opening her eyes. "It's rude." Pedro started, guilt flushing his face. "You're awake." Unfortunately. Her silver eyes opened, fixing on him with an intensity that made him want to look away. "You should have let me die." "Why?" "Because now you're a traitor too." The words hit harder than they should have. Pedro sat back on his heels, suddenly unsure what to do with his hands. "You said you were protecting the heart." "From him." "Who?" Morgana's laugh was bitter. "You won't believe me." "Try me. I just threw away my crown on the chance you're telling the truth." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as if trying to determine whether he was sincere. Finally she spoke, her voice growing slightly stronger as the warmth from the fire began to seep into her frozen limbs. "I was the keeper. Did you know that?" Pedro blinked. "The keeper?" The keepers were ancient. From the age of light 1,000 years ago. The line never ended. It just went into hiding. She coughed, and more blood flecked her lips. "When the world turned against magic, when the hunts began, the keepers learned to work in shadow. To protect the heart without anyone knowing we existed." "That's impossible," Lord Erebus said. "Lord Erebus." Morgana's voice hardened, and for a moment Pedro saw a flash of the power the legends spoke of. "Tell me, Prince, when did he first suggest I was the thief?" Pedro opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He'd never questioned it. On the morning they discovered the heart was gone, Erebus had been the one to find the evidence, traces of forbidden magic, a torn piece of cloth that matched descriptions of Morgana's robes. He'd been the one to suggest she'd fled into the Whispering Forest. He'd been the one to urge Pedro to hunt her down before she could use the heart's power for dark purposes. "He found the evidence," Pedro said slowly. "He showed me. He planted it." Morgana tried to sit up, failed, and fell back with a gasp of pain. "The night the heart vanished. I was there. I felt the sanctuary's wards break. I ran to stop whoever was breaching them. And I found Lord Erebus standing over the dead guards, the heart of light in his hands, dark magic pouring from him like smoke." Her eyes blazed with memory. "He smiled at me. Actually smiled. Then he said, 'Thank you for coming, Keeper. I'd hoped you would.'" Pedro's hands had gone cold despite the fire. He's been my father's advisor since before I was born. He practically raised me after my mother died." "How did your mother die, Prince?" The question was so unexpected that Pedro answered before he thought. "Childbirth. When my younger brother was born, there were complications. They both died." "How convenient." Morgana's voice was sharp now, almost angry. "And your father? How did he die?" "Age. Illness. He'd been sick for months." Pedro stopped. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting. I'm telling you. Erebus has been poisoning your kingdom for decades. Slowly, carefully, removing anyone who might notice, anyone who might interfere with his plans." She turned her face toward the fire. "Your mother had the gift. Did you know that?" Pedro's mouth went dry. No. She wasn't a mage. She kept it secret. Only the keepers knew. She could have sensed Erebus's dark magic if she'd lived long enough. So she didn't live. Morgana's voice was hollow. Neither did your brother. The gift often runs in bloodlines, you see. Strong in one generation, dormant in the next. Your father had no magic. But your brother... No. Pedro was on his feet now, backing away. You're lying. This is exactly what a witch would do. Tell pretty lies to save her own skin. And what does a witch gain by dying in a frozen cave? Morgana shot back. I told you not to save me, princeling. I told you to let me die. Because keeping me alive makes you the enemy of everyone who matters in your kingdom. Everyone Erebus has carefully placed in positions of power over 30 years of patience and planning. Pedro's back hit the cave wall. His mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle he'd never known existed suddenly clicking together. His father's mysterious illness that no healer could cure. The way Lord Erebus had been the first to suggest hunting Morgana. The fact that the heart had been stolen with such precision, bypassing wards that should have been impenetrable to anyone but a keeper or someone trained by keepers. Someone like a former student of the ancient arts who'd been banished for trying to corrupt the heart once before. You're saying Erebus tried to steal the heart before? 50 years ago, when he was young and impatient. The keeper stopped him and banished him from the sacred places. Morgana's breathing was labored now. But we made a mistake. We let him live. We thought mercy was wisdom. What did he want with it? Immortality, power, the ability to reshape kingdoms to his will. She coughed, and the ice in her chest pulsed with sick blue light. The heart of light doesn't just sustain life, Prince. In the right hands, it can extend it. Indefinitely. Erebus has been using dark magic to keep himself alive long past his natural span. But it's consuming him. He needs the heart to stabilize his corruption, to complete his transformation. Into what? Into something that was never meant to exist. A creature of pure magic, unbound by mortal limits, capable of ruling for centuries. Morgana's silver eyes locked onto his. And the first step in that transformation is making sure no one who knows the truth survives to oppose him. Pedro slid down the wall, his legs suddenly weak. If this is true, if even part of this is true, then I've been doing his work for him. 3 years hunting you while he consolidated power. 3 years searching for you while he... His voice trailed off as another realization struck. While he let my people suffer. The winter, that's his magic too, isn't it? The heart of light maintains the balance of the kingdom. Without it, winter comes naturally. But Erebus has been feeding the winter, making it worse, making your people desperate. Morgana's voice was fading again. Desperate people look for someone to blame. He gave them me. Pedro buried his face in his hands. 3 years. 3 years of believing he was the hero, that he was saving his kingdom. And all along, he'd been the fool, the weapon aimed by a master manipulator at the only person who could have exposed the truth. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you go to my father? I tried. Morgana's laugh was weak. I sent messages. I tried to reach him. But Erebus controls who sees the king, who speaks to him. Your father was already dying, Prince. The poison was too deep. And by the time I realized I couldn't fight Erebus directly, couldn't expose him without proof, the heart was already in danger. So you took it. I saved it. From him. She struggled to breathe, the ice creeping higher up her throat. And then I ran. Because I knew, if I stayed and fought, he'd destroy the heart, rather than let me reclaim it. At least in hiding, I could protect it. Keep it safe until... Until what? Until the true heir claimed it. Pedro's head snapped up. The true heir? But I'm. Not you, Prince. Morgana's smile was sad. Your younger brother. The one who died. He was supposed to be the next keeper. The gift was strong in him, even in the womb. That's why your mother had to die. Erebus couldn't risk a keeper being raised in the royal household. The cave seemed to spin around Pedro, his brother, the brother he'd never known, who died minutes after being born, who'd taken their mother with him into death. That baby had been supposed to be what? A guardian of the heart? A wielder of forbidden magic? But he's dead, Pedro said hollowly. So who's the heir now? Morgana looked at him with those silver eyes, and in them, Pedro saw knowledge that made his blood run cold. The gift runs in bloodlines, she repeated softly. Strong in one generation, dormant in the next. Your father had none. Your brother had it so strongly it killed your mother when it manifested during birth. You, the firstborn. She reached out with one ice-covered hand. You were supposed to be the dormant generation, safe from Erebus's attention, able to inherit normally. Pedro stared at her hand, at the blue veins of ice spreading across her fingers. What are you saying? I'm saying that sometimes the gift hides, waits, appears when it's needed most. Her hand dropped. I'm saying Erebus may have made a mistake leaving you alive. I don't have magic. I've never. Because no one taught you. Because your father kept it secret, even from you, to protect you from Erebus's suspicion. Morgana's eyes were closing again. But I can feel it, Prince. Your gift is there. Dormant, yes. Sleeping, but there. Pedro scrambled forward, grabbing her shoulders as she started to slump. No, you don't get to tell me this and then die. You don't get to. The ice, she whispered. It's spreading. I don't have much time. Then tell me how to stop it. You can't. It's self-inflicted. A curse I placed on myself to hide the heart where even Erebus couldn't find it. Pedro's hands were shaking. Where? Where is it? Morgana's hand moved to her chest, to the hollow of ice where her heart should be. Here. In me. Woven into my very essence. As long as I lived, the heart was protected. Her smile was infinitely sad. But the curse is consuming me. Once my heart turns completely to ice, the heart of light dies with me, and your kingdom dies 3 days later. Then we remove the curse. There has to be a way to. There is. Her eyes open one last time. But it requires power I no longer have. It requires. She trailed off, her eyes rolling back. The ice spread another inch, creeping across her chin. Pedro looked around the cave frantically, as if he'd find answers written on the stone walls. 3 days. 3 days before Aldrich told the court the truth. 3 days before Erebus realized Morgana was still alive and came to finish what he'd started. 3 days before the curse killed her and the heart of light was lost forever. Morgana, he said urgently, shaking her shoulders. Morgana, wake up. Tell me what you need. Tell me how to save you. But she didn't respond. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak and thready beneath his fingers. The ice was winning. And in that moment, alone in a cave with the dying woman he'd hunted for 3 years, Prince Pedro felt something shift inside him. A warmth in his chest, spreading through his arms, gathering in his hands where they touched Morgana's frozen skin. Golden light, faint flickering, but unmistakably magical, began to glow around his fingers. Pedro stared at his hands in shock. The gift. It was real, and it had just awakened. Pedro's hands were glowing, actually glowing, with a soft golden light that pushed back the shadows and made the ice in Morgana's chest look even more starkly blue by contrast. He stared at them, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. Magic. He was doing magic. Impossible, he whispered. But the light didn't fade. If anything, it grew brighter, pulsing in time with his racing heartbeat. Morgana's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time since he'd found her, there was something other than pain in them. Wonder. You're awakening it. She breathed. I can feel. I don't know what I'm doing, Pedro said, almost frantic. The warmth in his chest was growing, spreading, and he didn't understand it, didn't know how to control it. Make it stop. I don't. Don't stop. Her ice-cold hand covered his, holding it against her chest. The warmth, it's slowing the curse. Not by much, but enough. Pedro forced himself to breathe, to focus. The light in his hands responded to his emotions. He could feel that instinctively. Fear made it flicker. Panic made it dim. But when he thought about Morgana dying, about the truth being lost, about his kingdom suffering, while the real enemy laughed from the shadows, the light blazed brighter. How? He asked. How do I control it? Intent, Morgana whispered. Magic responds to will, to purpose. What do you want? I want you to live. Why? The question caught him off guard. Pedro looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the monster from the legends, but a woman who'd given up everything to protect people who hated her, who'd cursed herself to save a kingdom that wanted her dead, who'd spent 3 years alone, dying, waiting for someone to find the truth. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Because I was wrong. Because you deserve better than to die in the snow, alone and forgotten, while the man who betrayed you sits on my council and pretends to be righteous. The golden light pulsed, and where it touched the ice in Morgana's chest, blue began to fade to silver. The curse didn't break, but it slowed, retreating inch by painful inch. Morgana gasped, her back arching. More, it's working. Pedro poured everything he had into the magic, into the warmth flowing from his hands. He didn't know what he was doing, had no training, no understanding of the forces he was manipulating. But somehow, instinctively, he understood that magic wasn't about spells or incantations. It was about truth, about what made manifest, about choosing to act when action seemed impossible. The ice retreated another inch, then another. Morgana's breathing eased, color returning to her lips. And then, without warning, something else happened. The golden light of Pedro's magic and the silver glow of Morgana's remaining power met. Where they touched, they didn't fight or cancel out. They intertwined, gold and silver swirling together like water and oil that had somehow learned to mix. The combined light spread across Morgana's chest, wrapping around the ice curse like a glowing net. Pedro felt something snap into place, a connection forming between them that went deeper than touch, deeper than sight. He could feel her. Not just her physical presence, but her emotions, her pain, her desperate, dying hope that maybe someone had finally chosen to see the truth. He could feel the curse eating at her from within, could sense the heart of light pulsing weakly where it was woven into her essence, could almost hear the song of magic that connected all living things. And she could feel him. He knew it from the way her eyes went wide, from the sharp intake of breath. What? She whispered. What did you just do? I don't know. I didn't mean to. The soul bond. Morgana's voice was filled with awe and something that might have been fear. You've created a soul bond between us. Pedro pulled his hands back as if burned. The golden light faded, but the connection remained. He could still feel her, a warm presence in the back of his mind. What does that mean? It means we're linked, connected on a level deeper than blood or magic. She struggled to sit up, and this time succeeded. It means I can feel what you feel, know what you know, and you. I can feel you too, Pedro finished. Through the bond, he sensed her fear, her confusion, her complicated mix of gratitude and terror at what had just happened. Can we break it? I don't know. Soul bonds are rare. They usually form between mages who've worked together for years, who've learned to trust each other completely. She looked at him with those silver eyes. We're enemies. Or we were. This shouldn't be possible. Maybe we were never really enemies, Pedro said quietly. Maybe I just didn't know better. Morgana was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed, a real laugh this time, not the bitter, broken sound from before. 3 years you hunted me. 3 years of running, of hiding, of expecting every sound in the forest to be you coming to kill me. And now you save my life and accidentally bind your soul to mine. She shook her head. The gods have a twisted sense of humor. Can you stand? I think so. The curse is still there, but... She touched her chest, where the ice had retreated to a small circle around her heart. You bought me time. Days, maybe a week, but we'll spread again. Then we need to end this. Quickly. Pedro stood, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her skin was still too cold, but no longer the deathly chill from before. You said there was a way to remove the curse completely. What do we need? Morgana opened her mouth to answer, then froze. Through their new bond, Pedro felt a spike of alarm. What? Run. The word was barely out of her mouth before the cave entrance exploded inward. Dark magic, oily, wrong, tasting of rot and corruption, poured into the cave. 3 figures in black robes stepped through the opening, their faces hidden behind masks carved to look like screaming skulls. Dark mages. Erebus's agents. The keeper dies tonight, one of them said in a voice like grinding stones. Lord Erebus has been patient long enough. Pedro's sword was in his hand before he consciously decided to draw it. He stepped in front of Morgana, putting himself between her and the assassins. If you want her, you go through me. The lead mage laughed. The prince who hunts monsters now protects one? Erebus was right. The witch has poisoned your mind. The only poison in my kingdom comes from your master. Pedro's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. Tell him I know the truth. Tell him I'm coming for him. You won't leave this cave alive. The assassins attacked. Dark magic lashed out like black whips, tearing through the air where Pedro had been standing a moment before. He dove, rolled, came up swinging. His sword caught the first mage across the chest, but instead of blood, black smoke poured from the wound. Not human, or not anymore. Pedro. Morgana's voice behind him. They're shadow constructs. Physical attacks won't. A whip of darkness wrapped around his sword arm, yanking him off balance. He hit the cave floor hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. One of the constructs loomed over him, dark magic gathering in its palms for a killing blow. Then silver light exploded across the cave. Morgana stood, one hand extended, her power pouring out despite her weakened state. The silver magic struck the construct, and where it touched, shadow burned away like mist in sunlight. The thing screamed a horrible, inhuman sound and dissolved into nothing. But the effort cost her. She staggered, the ice in her chest pulsing dangerously. Through their bond, Pedro felt her pain, felt the curse surging back stronger than before. The other 2 constructs turned toward her. No! Pedro surged to his feet. Without thinking, without planning, he reached for the warmth he'd felt before. The golden light blazed to life around his hands, brighter than before, fueled by desperate need. He threw it forward. The magic struck the nearest construct, and Pedro was shocked when it worked. Golden light wrapped around shadow, burning it away. But this was harder than healing had been. The dark magic fought back, trying to corrupt his power, to turn it against him. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder. The construct dissolved. But the third was already moving, too fast, dark magic lashing toward Morgana's unprotected back. Their bond flared to life. Pedro didn't understand how, but suddenly he could feel Morgana's magic as if it were his own. Could sense how she shaped it, controlled it, made it respond to her will. And she could feel his, the raw, untrained power that was blazing to life inside him. They moved in perfect synchronization. Silver and gold magic intertwined, forming a barrier just as the dark whip struck. The attack shattered against their combined power. Before the construct could react, they struck together, two streams of light, one silver and one gold, that merged into something brighter than either alone. The final assassin didn't even have time to scream. Silence fell over the cave. Pedro and Morgana stood back to back, breathing hard, power still crackling around them. Through their bond, Pedro felt her exhaustion, her pain, and her shock. "That shouldn't be possible," she whispered. "What we just did, combining our magic that seamlessly, it takes years of practice." "The bond?" Pedro asked. "More than that. The bond creates connection, but what we did was—" She turned to face him, and her eyes were wide with understanding. "You have more than just the gift, Pedro. You have the Keeper's gift. The ability to join your magic with others, to amplify and harmonize power. It's the rarest form of the talent, and it's what made the Keepers so vital. They didn't just protect the heart, they united mages who otherwise couldn't work together." Pedro was still staring at his hands. The golden light had faded, but he could feel it inside him now, waiting. "I don't understand. If I have this power, why did no one tell me? Why did my father keep it secret?" "To protect you from Erebus." Morgana touched his arm, and through the bond, he felt her certainty. "If Erebus had known you carried the Keeper's gift, he would have killed you the same way he killed your brother. You're not just a threat to his plans, you're the one person in the kingdom who could unite others against him. Then we need to move. Now." Pedro gathered their supplies with quick, efficient movements. Those constructs were a scouting party. Erebus will know they failed, which means he'll know you're still alive, and that I'm helping you. He'll send more. "Where can we go?" Everywhere in Valdoria is his territory by now. "Not everywhere." Pedro helped her to her feet, noting how she still trembled despite the retreat of the curse. "You said you needed something to remove the curse completely. What is it?" "The ritual of severance. But it can only be performed at the Temple of First Light, and that's 3 days hard ride from here." "I know. I studied the old texts when I was searching for you." Pedro's jaw tightened. "We can make it in 2 if we don't stop." "Pedro." Morgana caught his arm. "Erebus controls the roads, the villages. He has eyes everywhere. 2 people traveling together, one of them a wanted criminal, and the other a prince who just went rogue, will be caught before we make it halfway. Then we don't use the roads. We go through the Whispering Forest. It's longer, more dangerous, but the forest is old magic. Erebus's corruption hasn't touched it yet." Understanding lit her eyes. Yes, that might work. We'll need horses, supplies, and—" Pedro paused. "I need to send a message." "To who?" "To Captain Aldrich. To tell him I'm not enchanted and to watch Erebus. To look for proof of what we know." He met her eyes. "We can't just expose Erebus with words. We need evidence, something undeniable." Through their bond, he felt Morgana's approval. "You think like a keeper already." "I think like someone who just discovered everything he believed was a lie." Pedro moved to the cave entrance, checking for more attackers. The forest was silent, but it was the wrong kind of silence. The waiting kind. "Come on. We have a long night ahead of us, and I'd rather be moving when Erebus's next wave arrives." They slipped out into the frozen night, leaving the cave and its evidence of battle behind. Above them, stars glittered like ice chips against a black sky. The temperature had dropped even further, and Pedro's breath fogged in the air. But as they moved through the forest, as Morgana leaned on him for support, and he felt their magics resonating in harmony through their bond, Pedro realized something. For the first time in 3 years, he felt warm. Behind them, in the capital city, Lord Erebus stood in his tower chamber and watched through the eyes of a dying raven as two figures disappeared into the whispering forest. "The prince is more resourceful than anticipated," he murmured. "No matter. The council meets in 3 days. If he returns, he'll be arrested as a traitor. If he doesn't—" A dark smile crossed his ancient face. "Then the kingdom will learn that their beloved prince died hunting the witch. Either way, the outcome serves my purposes." He turned to a shadowed corner of the room where something waited. Something that had once been human, but was now much more, and much less. "Send the hunters," he commanded. "Bring me the prince alive if possible, but bring me the witch's head. The heart dies with her, and without it, this kingdom will be mine at last." The thing in the shadows bowed and vanished. 3 days until the council. 2 days' journey to the Temple of First Light. And an army of corrupted hunters closing in on two people who'd just begun to understand they might be each other's only hope of survival. The hunt had begun. But this time, Pedro wasn't the hunter. They traveled through the night, keeping to the deepest parts of the whispering forest where even moonlight struggled to penetrate. Morgana grew weaker with each hour, the ice in her chest spreading again now that Pedro's healing magic had faded. He could feel it through their bond, the cold creeping through her veins, the way each breath became a little harder, a little more painful. By dawn, she could barely walk. "We need to rest," Pedro said, catching her as she stumbled over a root. Through their bond, he felt her exhaustion like weight pressing down on his own chest. "No time," she gasped. "The curse, it's accelerating. What you did last night slowed it, but when I used my magic to fight those constructs—" She coughed and blue-tinged blood speckled the snow. "I shouldn't have. Each time I use power now, it feeds the curse. Makes it stronger." Pedro swung her up into his arms, ignoring her weak protest. She weighed almost nothing, as if the curse was consuming her substance along with her life. "Then stop using magic. Let me carry you." "You can't carry me all the way to the temple." "Watch me." They pressed on as the sun rose, painting the frozen forest in shades of pink and gold. Pedro's arms burned, his legs trembled with exhaustion, but he didn't stop. Through their bond, he felt Morgana's guilt, her desire to tell him to leave her behind, and his absolute refusal to even consider it. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally, her voice barely a whisper against his chest. "Because it's right." "That's not a reason. I'm the enemy. Your kingdom wants me dead. Saving me costs you everything." Pedro was quiet for a moment, picking his way carefully over an icy stream. 3 years ago, when they told me you'd stolen the Heart of Light, I didn't question it. I just believed. I picked up my sword and I hunted you because that's what I was supposed to do. That's what a good prince does. He protects his kingdom from monsters. And now I know that the real monsters aren't always the ones with magic. Sometimes they're the ones wearing friendly faces, standing at your side, whispering in your ear. He looked down at her. "You cursed yourself to save something no one thanked you for. You spent 3 years alone, dying, knowing that if you failed, an entire kingdom would fall. And you did it anyway. That's not a monster. That's a hero." Through their bond, he felt her emotions surge, grief, gratitude, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. "I wasn't always alone," she said softly. "I had a life once. A home. I was a healer in a small village near the southern border. I helped deliver babies, mended broken bones, cured fevers. Simple magic, the kind that helps instead of harms. What happened? Lord Erebus happened. He came to my village searching for something. I didn't know what at the time. He sensed my power and tried to recruit me. When I refused, when I reported him to the regional magistrate for practicing forbidden magic." Her voice hardened. "He had my village burned. 53 people died. The magistrate blamed it on rebels and had me arrested for consorting with dark forces. Pedro's arms tightened around her. How did you escape? The keepers. They'd been watching Erebus for years, trying to gather evidence of his crimes. They rescued me from prison, brought me to the Temple of First Light, taught me the truth about the heart and the ancient protections. I was supposed to have years of training before taking the vow. Her laugh was bitter. I got 6 months before Erebus made his move. The sun was higher now, but the temperature remained bitterly cold. Pedro's breath formed clouds that hung in the still air. Through their bond, he sensed something else, a presence in the forest, watching them. Not close yet, but getting closer. We're being followed, he said quietly. Morgana's eyes, which had been drifting closed, snapped open. The hunters. Erebus's elite assassins. They're not constructs. They're real people he's corrupted, bound to his will with dark magic. How many? I can't tell. The curse is interfering with my senses. But if Erebus sent hunters instead of constructs... She struggled to sit up in his arms. Pedro, you need to leave me. Run. They want me, not you. You can still. No, you're not listening. The hunters are trained killers. Even at full strength, I'd barely survive an encounter with one, as I am now and with you untrained. She grabbed his collar, forcing him to meet her eyes. They will kill us both. Your death serves no one. Neither does yours. Pedro set her down gently, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her. How far to the temple? Half a day if we had horses. On foot with me like this. She shook her head. We won't make it. Pedro closed his eyes, reaching for the warmth inside him. The golden magic responded immediately, flooding through him with an intensity that made him gasp. It was stronger than before, as if each time he used it, it grew more potent. Through their bond, he felt Morgana's shock. Your power, it's growing too fast. That shouldn't be possible. Maybe it knows we need it. Pedro opened his eyes, and for a moment, they glowed with golden light. You said I have the Keeper's gift. The ability to unite magic, to harmonize power. What if I could do more than that? What if I can channel your magic while you rest, buy us time? That's insane. You have no training. Channeling another mage's power without proper preparation could kill you both. We're dead anyway if we don't try. He took her hands. Show me. Teach me. We have hours before the hunters catch up. Use them. Morgana stared at him, and through their bond, he felt her warring emotions. Fear of what he was suggesting. Hope that it might work. And something else, a fierce, desperate pride that he was willing to try. All right, she said finally. But if this goes wrong, if you feel your magic turning against you, you let go immediately. Understand? I understand. They settled against an ancient oak, its massive trunk providing some shelter from the wind. Morgana placed her ice-cold hands over his, and silver light began to glow where they touched. Magic is will made manifest, she said, falling into the teaching tone she must have used as a healer. But it's also connection. To the world, to other living things, to the flow of power that runs through everything. You felt it last night when we fought together, the way our magics recognized each other, harmonized without conscious effort. Pedro nodded. Through their bond, he could feel her magic like a distant song, beautiful and sad and ancient. Now, I need you to open yourself to that connection. Not just feeling it, but becoming it. Letting my power flow through you as if you were a vessel, a conduit. Her eyes locked onto his. It will hurt. My magic is old, and it's been twisted by the curse. You'll feel the ice, the cold, the death that's consuming me. Can you handle that? For you? Yes. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than he'd intended. Through their bond, Morgana's emotions surged again, that nameless thing growing stronger, undeniable. But there was no time to examine it. The presence in the forest was getting closer. "Then let's begin," she said. Silver light poured from her hands into his. Pedro gasped as he felt her magic flood into him, and with it, the full weight of the curse. It was like drowning in ice water, like having his veins filled with frozen needles, like his heart was slowly crystallizing in his chest, each beat a little weaker, a little slower. This was what Morgana had been enduring for 3 years. This pain, this cold, this slow march toward death. And she'd borne it alone without complaint, because it was the only way to protect the heart of light. Rage flooded through him. Rage at Erebus for causing this, at the kingdom for believing his lies, at himself for hunting her instead of helping her. The golden light inside him blazed in response, fed by his fury and his desperate need to fix this, to take away her pain. Where gold met silver, something miraculous happened. The ice in her magic began to thaw. Not disappearing, but transforming, becoming something new, something that combined the cold precision of her power with the warm strength of his. Through their bond, he felt her gasp as the curse retreated another inch, driven back by their combined will. "It's working," she breathed. "Pedro, you're actually—" A howl split the air. Not a wolf's howl, something worse. Something that had once been human, but remembered only hunger and the hunt. The hunters had found them. Pedro pulled his hands back, the magic connection severing with a shock that left them both gasping. He grabbed his sword as 3 figures emerged from the trees, men in leather armor, their faces twisted into masks of corruption, their eyes black with Erebus's dark magic. The keeper and the prince, one of them said in a voice like grinding glass, "Lord Erebus sends his regards." Pedro stepped in front of Morgana, sword raised. Through their bond, he felt her gathering what little power she had left. "Don't," he said quietly. "Save your strength. I can handle this. You can't fight 3 hunters alone. I'm not alone. I have you." He smiled without looking back. "Remember? We're connected now. Whatever happens, we face it together." The hunters attacked, and the frozen forest erupted into battle. Pedro's sword met the first hunter's blade with a crash that sent sparks flying. The man was fast, impossibly fast, his movements blurred by dark magic. Pedro barely blocked the follow-up strike, his arms shaking from impact. These weren't shadow constructs that could be burned away. These were living weapons, and they were going to kill him. Golden light blazed around Pedro's free hand. He thrust it forward, and a bolt of magic struck the hunter square in the chest. The man stumbled back, but didn't fall. Black smoke poured from the wound, and when it cleared, the flesh beneath was already healing. "Your magic is untrained, princeling," the hunter laughed. "It will take more than that to—" Silver light struck from behind Pedro. Morgana, barely able to stand, had raised one trembling hand. Her magic wrapped around the hunter like chains, and where it touched, the dark corruption began to burn away. "Together," she gasped. "Strike together." Pedro didn't hesitate. He poured his power into hers, gold and silver intertwining. Their combined magic blazed brighter than either alone, and this time when it struck, the hunter's scream cut off abruptly. The dark corruption couldn't withstand the dual assault. It burned away, leaving behind only a confused, terrified man who collapsed to his knees. What was I doing?" he whispered, staring at his hands. "I remember. Lord Erebus, he said he could cure my daughter's illness if I just— oh gods, what did I do?" But there was no time for answers. The other 2 hunters were already moving, learning from their companions' mistake. They spread out, trying to attack from different angles to prevent Pedro and Morgana from focusing their combined power. Through their bond, Pedro felt Morgana's strength failing. That last attack had cost her too much. The ice in her chest was spreading faster now, reaching for her throat. She had minutes, maybe less. He had to end this quickly. Pedro reached for the warmth inside him, for the Keeper's gift that Morgana said could unite power. If he could harmonize with her magic, could he harmonize with the forest itself? With the ancient life that thrummed through every tree, every blade of grass beneath the snow? It was insane. But everything about the last 2 days had been insane. He thrust his awareness outward. The world exploded into sensation. He felt the oak tree at his back, old and patient and strong. Felt the sleeping life beneath the frozen ground, waiting for spring. Felt the pulse of magic that ran through everything, the same magic that had created the Heart of Light 1,000 years ago. And he pulled. Golden light erupted from the ground around them. Not his power alone, but the forest's power channeled through him, amplified by his Keeper's gift. The 2 remaining hunters had time to look shocked before the light struck them, wrapping around the dark corruption and burning it away. They fell, freed from Erebus's control but unconscious. The forest's magic faded, and Pedro collapsed to his knees, utterly exhausted. "Impossible," Morgana whispered. She'd sunk to the ground beside him, her face pale. You channeled the land itself. That's not just the Keeper's gift. That's the Founder's gift. The original Keeper who created the protections. No one's had that level of power in 500 years. Great, Pedro managed. Can I use it to get us to the temple? Because I can't feel my legs. Despite everything, Morgana laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine, and through their bond, Pedro felt how rare such moments had become for her. No, that kind of channeling takes days to recover from. But she looked at the freed hunters, who were starting to stir. We have horses now, or we will, once these men wake up enough to tell us where they left them. It took an hour before the first hunter, the one Morgana had freed, was coherent enough to speak. His name was Marcus, and tears streamed down his face as he described what Erebus had done to him, to all of them. How the dark magic had trapped them inside their own bodies, forced them to commit atrocities while they screamed inside, unable to stop. My daughter, he kept repeating. He said he'd cure her. He said if I just served him for 1 year, he'd use the Heart of Light to heal her. But it's been 2 years now, and she's still dying, and I couldn't stop, couldn't break free. She's at the capital. Pedro asked gently. Marcus nodded. In the charity hospital. The one Lord Erebus funds. Of course. Another method of control. Take desperate people, promise them the one thing they can't refuse, then bind them with dark magic. How many others had Erebus trapped this way? How many of the city guard, the court officials, the advisors surrounding Pedro's throne were corrupted pawns? When this is over, Pedro said, when we've stopped Erebus and recovered the heart, I'll heal your daughter myself. That's a promise. Marcus stared at him. You have that power. He has the Founder's gift, Morgana said quietly. He could heal every sick child in the kingdom if he learned to control it properly. The horses were tethered 2 miles away, 3 strong mounts that could handle the terrain. Pedro helped Morgana onto the largest, then swung up behind her. She sagged against him immediately, her strength finally giving out. How far, he asked. 3 hours if we ride hard. But Pedro. She turned to look at him, and her silver eyes were filled with something that might have been fear. There's something I need to tell you about the ritual of severance, about what it costs. Tell me while we ride. They urged the horses forward, Marcus and the other freed hunters following behind. Morgana was silent for a long moment, and through their bond, Pedro felt her struggling with how to explain. The Heart of Light isn't physically inside me, she said finally. When I said I wove it into my essence, I meant it literally. It's bound to my soul, protected by layers of magic that make impossible to steal or destroy without killing me first. That's why you cursed yourself. Yes. The Ice Heart curse was meant to create a secondary barrier to hide the heart's presence even further. But curses are living things. They grow, they consume, they eventually destroy the caster. Her voice dropped. The only way to remove the curse and extract the heart without killing me is the ritual of severance. But that ritual requires 3 things. Pedro waited, already dreading what she was going to say. First, a willing sacrifice. Someone who offers their life force as a bridge between my soul and the heart, allowing them to be separated without fatal trauma. She paused. Second, pure magic. Power untainted by darkness or corruption. And third, her voice broke. True trust, between the caster and the sacrifice. Because the bridge works both ways. The person performing the ritual will see everything. Every memory, every secret, every moment of my life. And I'll see theirs. There can be no lies, no barriers. Just absolute, terrifying honesty. And the cost? Pedro asked, though he already knew. The bridge becomes permanent. The sacrifice binds themselves to the heart, and to me, forever. They become the second keeper, sharing the duty, sharing the burden. They'll feel what I feel, know what I know. She turned to look at him fully. They'll give up their freedom, their throne, their future. Everything they were, they'll have to surrender to become something new. Pedro was quiet for a long time, guiding the horse through the frozen forest. Behind them, Marcus and the others kept their distance, giving them privacy. "You're telling me this because you think I'll be the one performing the ritual," he said finally. "You're the only one who can. The sacrifice must have the keeper's gift, must be able to harmonize with both me and the heart." Morgana's hands tightened on the reins. "But I won't ask it of you. We'll find another way. We have to, because you're a Prince Pedro. Your kingdom needs you. Your wife needs you. You can't just—" "Anna and I haven't been truly married in years," Pedro interrupted. "Oh, we're bound by law and ceremony. We share a bed and perform our duties. But there's no love there. There never was. It was a political arrangement, and we both knew it." He paused. "As for my kingdom, maybe what Valdoria needs isn't a prince who sits on a throne and signs decrees. Maybe it needs someone who can actually protect the Heart of Light, who can stand against the corruption that's been eating it alive. You don't understand what you'd be giving up. Don't I?" Pedro's voice was sharp. "I've spent my entire life being what everyone else needed me to be. The dutiful son, the proper prince, the unquestioning heir who followed orders and never challenged the people in power." Through their bond, he felt her emotions surge in response to his. "Finding you dying in that snow was the first real choice I've made in years. And it felt right. This, helping you, protecting the heart, standing against Erebus, this feels right. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." He touched her shoulder, and golden light flickered where their skin met. "You said the ritual requires true trust. I trust you, Morgana. I've seen your memories through our bond, felt your pain and your purpose. I know you're telling the truth. So when we get to the temple, when we perform the ritual of severance, I'll be the sacrifice. Not because you're asking me to, but because it's what I choose." Tears slid down Morgana's cheeks, freezing before they hit her collar. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you cursed yourself to save people who wanted you dead. I know you've spent 3 years dying alone rather than let a monster have the heart. I know you're brave and stubborn and probably too self-sacrificing for your own good." He smiled. "I know we have a soul bond that lets me feel your emotions, and right now you're terrified I'm making this choice for the wrong reasons. Are you?" The question hung in the cold air. Through their bond, Pedro felt what she was really asking. Was he doing this out of duty? Out of guilt for hunting her? Or was there something else? Something neither of them was ready to name? "I don't know," he admitted. "All I know is that when I found you dying in the snow, something in me recognized something in you. like I'd been searching for you my whole life without knowing it. He paused. Is that real? Or is it just the bond making me feel things that aren't there? The bond amplifies what's already present. It doesn't create feelings from nothing. Morgana's voice was barely a whisper. If you're drawn to me, if you feel connected, it's because part of you already did. The bond just made it impossible to ignore. They rode in silence after that, both lost in thoughts too complicated to voice. The sun climbed higher, but the cold never eased. Through their bond, Pedro felt the ice in Morgana's chest continuing to spread, felt her life force dimming like a candle in the wind. They had to reach the temple soon. Minutes were becoming precious. The forest began to change. The trees grew larger, older, their bark carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the shadows. The Temple of First Light was close. Pedro could feel it, a warm presence ahead that pushed back against the cold. There, Morgana breathed, pointing. Through the trees, Pedro saw it. The temple rose from a forest floor like it had grown there, its white stone walls seamless and perfect. Ancient magic saturated the air around it, so thick Pedro could taste it, pure and clean and utterly unlike the corruption of Erebus's power. They dismounted at the entrance, and Marcus stepped forward. "We'll stand guard," he said. "Lord Erebus will send more when these hunters don't report back. Whatever you need to do in there will buy you time." "Thank you." Pedro clasped the man's shoulder. "When this is over, I won't forget what you've sacrificed. Just save the kingdom, my prince. That's payment enough." Pedro helped Morgana up the temple steps. Each one seemed harder for her, the ice now covering half her chest and climbing her throat. When they reached the doors, massive oak bound with silver, she placed her hand on the wood. "Only a keeper can open these," she said. "Place your hand beside mine." He did. Golden and silver light flared simultaneously, and the doors swung open. Inside, the temple was beautiful beyond words. The ceiling soared overhead, carved with constellations that actually glowed. The walls were covered in murals showing the history of the keepers, men and women of all ages, all backgrounds, united in protecting the heart of light. At the center of it all, on a raised dais, stood an altar of pure white stone. This was where the ritual would take place. "Morgana," Pedro said quietly as they approached the altar. "Before we do this, I need to know. Have you seen it? Through our bond, have you looked at my memories the way I've looked at yours?" She nodded slowly. "Then you know the kind of person I've been. The things I've done in Erebus's service, believing I was doing good. The people I've hurt." His voice cracked. "You know I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who was too blind to see the truth." Morgana stopped, turning to face him. She placed one ice-cold hand on his cheek. "I've seen everything," she said softly. "And I've seen who you are beneath the titles and the duties and the expectations. I've seen the man who chose compassion over vengeance, who risked everything to save someone he'd been taught to hate." Her thumb brushed his skin. "That man is a hero, Pedro, even if he doesn't believe it yet. And if we do this ritual, if we bind ourselves together forever, you're sure you can live with that? With being tied to someone like me?" "I'm already tied to you. The soul bond saw to that." She smiled, sad and genuine. "Now I'm asking you to take it further, to become not just my ally, but my partner, my equal, my—" She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Through their bond, he felt what she couldn't say. "Then let's begin," he said, "before I lose my nerve." They approached the altar together, and Morgana began to explain what he needed to do. The ritual of severance would strip away all their defenses, all their masks. It would lay them bare before each other, every fear, every hope, every secret shame and hidden dream. And when it was over, they would be bound together for the rest of their lives. Partners, keepers, maybe more. Pedro took a deep breath and placed his hands on the altar. "I'm ready." The ritual began, and the temple filled with light. The ritual took hours. Pedro had no sense of time passing, only the overwhelming flood of sensation as Morgana's entire existence poured into him. He saw her childhood in vivid detail, felt the joy of her first successful healing, experienced the horror of watching her village burn while Erebus smiled. He lived through 3 years of running and hiding, of the curse slowly consuming her, of nights spent alone in frozen forests, wondering if anyone would ever know the truth. And she saw him. Saw the boy who'd lost his mother too young, who'd been shaped by Lord Erebus's patient manipulation. Saw the prince who'd tried so hard to be good, to be worthy, while surrounded by corruption he couldn't recognize. Saw his doubts, his fears, his desperate longing to matter. When their memories finally merged, when past became shared instead of separate, something profound happened. The ice in Morgana's chest cracked. The curse that had been consuming her for 3 years shuddered and broke, unable to withstand the pure connection between them. But instead of disappearing, the ice transformed. Blue became crystalline silver, spreading through her veins not as death, but as light. And in her chest, where the curse had created a hollow, something began to pulse. The heart of light was visible now, a crystal of impossible beauty that glowed with warm radiance. It was no longer hidden within her soul. It was separate, free, ready to be reclaimed. Pedro reached for it, his hands shaking. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, warmth flooded through him. Knowledge poured into his mind, not his own memories, but the heart's memories, 1,000 years of keepers who'd given their lives to protect this sacred light. And he understood. The heart of light wasn't just a magical artifact. It was hope made manifest. The promise that even in the darkest winter, warmth could survive. That goodness wasn't dead, just sleeping, waiting for someone brave enough to wake it. He lifted the heart from the altar, and the moment it left Morgana's chest, she collapsed. No! Pedro caught her before she hit the ground. Through their bond, he felt her life force fading rapidly. The ritual had taken too much, or the curse's transformation hadn't been enough. Or, the bond, she whispered, her voice weak. Feed it through the bond. Pedro didn't understand, but he didn't need to. He pulled her close, pressing the heart of light against both their chests. Golden magic poured from him into her, and the heart amplified it, magnified it, turned it into pure, healing energy that flooded through her dying body. The silver light in her veins blazed brighter. The ice that had been consuming her became part of her, no longer a curse, but a mark of what she'd endured and survived. When she opened her eyes, they glowed with silver light that perfectly complemented his gold. "You did it," she breathed. "You actually did it." "We did it," Pedro corrected. He helped her sit up, still keeping one arm around her waist. Together. They sat like that for a long moment, simply breathing, feeling the weight of what they'd accomplished and what it meant. Outside, they could hear Marcus and the others fighting. More hunters had arrived, drawn by the magical surge of the ritual. "We need to go," Morgana said reluctantly. "Erebus knows we have the heart now. He'll be preparing. Let him prepare." Pedro rose, offering his hand. When she took it, power crackled between them, gold and silver perfectly balanced. "We have what we need to expose him. The heart of light can reveal corruption, burn away dark magic. In front of the court, with the entire kingdom watching, we'll make him show his true face. And if they don't believe us, if they think we're the corrupt ones, then we let the heart judge." Pedro's voice was hard. "Ancient law says the heart knows truth from lies. If we place it on the throne, and it reveals Erebus's corruption, no one can dispute it." Morgana's smile was fierce. "You've learned to think like a keeper already." They emerged from the temple to find Marcus and his men holding back a dozen more hunters. The freed men were exhausted, bleeding, but still fighting. When they saw Pedro and Morgana, when they saw the heart of light blazing in Pedro's hands, hope lit their faces. "The prince has the heart." Marcus shouted, "The kingdom can be saved." The hunters hesitated, and in that moment of doubt, Pedro struck. He raised the heart high, and golden light exploded outward. Every hunter touched by that light screamed as the dark corruption burned away, as Erebus's control shattered. They fell to their knees, freed but broken, sobbing as they remembered what they'd done while enslaved. "It's over," Pedro said quietly, addressing all of them. "Lord Erebus's hold on you is broken, but the kingdom is still in danger. Will you ride with us? Will you help expose the man who did this to you?" As one, the freed hunters rose and knelt before him. "We will follow you into death itself, my prince," Marcus said. "Just give the order." Pedro looked at Morgana, who nodded. "Then we ride for the capital. The council meets today, and we're going to give them a truth they can't ignore." The journey back took 2 days of hard riding. They pushed the horses to their limits, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Through their bond, Pedro felt Morgana's fear growing as they drew closer to the capital. She was returning to the place that had condemned her, to face people who'd wanted her dead for 3 years. "I'm here," he said quietly as they paused to rest on the second night. "Whatever happens, you're not facing them alone. They'll want me executed. Even with the heart as proof, even with your testimony," she shook her head. "People don't like admitting they were wrong, especially when it means they hunted an innocent woman for years. Then they can be uncomfortable." Pedro's voice was firm. "You saved them. Whether they acknowledge it or not, you saved them. And I won't let them forget that." They reached the capital at dawn on the 3rd day. The city was exactly as Pedro remembered. White stone buildings covered in frost, streets packed with people bundled against the cold. But something felt different. The oppressive weight of Erebus's corruption hung over everything like a blanket, visible now that Pedro knew what to look for. "The entire city is saturated with his magic," Morgana whispered. "He's been building this web for decades. We won't just be fighting him, we'll be fighting the accumulated power of 30 years. Then it's a good thing we have the heart of light." Pedro squeezed her hand, and each other. They rode through the main gates, Marcus and the freed hunters flanking them. People stopped and stared. The prince returned from his hunt, but riding beside the witch everyone wanted dead, carrying a glowing crystal that could only be the heart of light. Whispers spread like wildfire. By the time they reached the palace, a crowd had gathered. And waiting at the palace steps, surrounded by guards, was Queen Anna. Pedro's wife looked older than when he'd left. Worry had carved lines around her eyes, and her face was pale with strain. When she saw him, relief and anger warred in her expression. "Pedro," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "You're alive." "I am. I'm sorry I didn't send word, but you were too busy consorting with the enemy." Her eyes moved to Morgana, and there was no warmth there. "Lord Erebus said you'd been enchanted, that the witch had corrupted you. He wanted to send an army to bring you back, but I insisted we wait." Her voice hardened. "I should have listened to him." "Anna, listen to me." "No, you listen." She descended the steps, guards moving with her. "The council has declared you unfit to rule. Your crown has been forfeit. If you surrender now, come quietly, there may be mercy. But if you insist on this madness—" She gestured to Morgana. "If you insist on protecting the woman who cursed our kingdom, then you're a traitor. And traitors hang." The crowd murmured. Some looked angry, some confused. But many looked at the heart of light in Pedro's hands with desperate hope. "I have proof," Pedro said loudly, addressing not just Anna but everyone watching. "Proof that Morgana isn't the enemy. Proof that the real villain has been standing among us, poisoning our kingdom from within." Proof. Lord Erebus's voice cut through the crowd. He emerged from the palace, flanked by advisors and guards. He looked exactly as Pedro remembered, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. The perfect advisor. The perfect mentor. What proof could you possibly have that would excuse 3 years of hunting the witch? 3 years she spent hiding while our kingdom froze. Pedro met those kind eyes and saw the darkness lurking beneath. How had he never noticed? How had he been so blind? The proof is in your own magic, Pedro said. He raised the heart of light. This is the heart of light, reclaimed from the woman who protected it. Ancient law says it reveals truth and burns away corruption. So here's my offer, Lord Erebus. Place your hand on the heart. Let it judge whether you're innocent or guilty. If you're truly the loyal servant you claim to be, you have nothing to fear. Erebus's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. That's absurd. The heart doesn't judge people, it sustains the kingdom's magic. Then place your hand on it. Prove me wrong. The crowd was silent now, everyone watching. Erebus looked around, seeing the doubt growing on people's faces. Even Anna looked uncertain. Very well, Erebus said finally. If it will end this farce and prove the witch has corrupted you, I'll humor your delusion. He walked toward Pedro, his movements calm and confident. But through their bond, Morgana gasped. Pedro, he's gathering power. He's going to attack. Erebus lunged, and his kind mask finally shattered. Dark magic exploded from him, a wave of corruption that would have killed everyone in the courtyard. But Pedro was ready. He thrust the heart of light forward, and golden light met darkness. The two forces collided with a sound like thunder. The heart's pure magic burned through Erebus's attack, pushing it back, revealing the truth of what he'd become. His distinguished appearance melted away. The man beneath was ancient, withered, held together by dark magic and corruption. Black veins covered his skin, and his eyes were pits of shadow. He looked like death given form, like every nightmare the legends spoke of. The crowd screamed. Anna stumbled back, horror on her face. No, Erebus snarled. No. I was so close. The kingdom was mine. The power was mine. You never deserved it, Pedro said quietly. You never understood that true power isn't taken, it's earned. Through sacrifice and service, and choosing what's right even when it costs everything. He reached for Morgana's hand. Their magic flared together, gold and silver intertwining. Through their bond, through the heart of light, they channeled something greater than either alone. The truth. It poured out from a heart in waves of light, showing everyone what Erebus had done. Every life he'd taken, every corruption he'd planted, every lie he'd told over 30 years of patient evil. The crowd saw it all, saw Pedro's mother murdered in her bed, saw villages burned, saw good people twisted into hunters and forced to commit atrocities. They saw Morgana protecting the heart, cursing herself to keep it safe, spending 3 years dying alone so that someday someone might find the truth. And they saw Pedro's choice in the snow, the moment he decided to see past the lies and save an enemy who turned out to be a hero. When the vision faded, there was absolute silence. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone began to clap. Others joined, and soon the entire courtyard erupted in cheers. Not for Erebus, not even for Pedro, for Morgana, the woman who'd saved them all. Anna approached slowly, her face a mask of shame and wonder. I was wrong. Gods, I was so wrong. She looked at Morgana. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Morgana nodded, unable to speak. Erebus screamed, a sound of pure rage and despair. You think this is over? You think exposing me changes anything? I've corrupted every institution, placed my people in every position of power. Kill me, and 100 others will rise to take my place. You're wrong, Pedro said. The heart of light blazed brighter in his hands. Because now we have keepers again. People who can sense corruption and burn it away. People who will protect the kingdom the way it was always meant to be protected. He looked at Morgana, and through their bond, they moved as one. Together, they raised the heart of light high. Golden and silver light poured from it, spreading across the entire capital. Everywhere it touched, Erebus's corruption burned away. His carefully planted network, his 30 years of patient evil, unraveled in minutes. And Erebus himself? The dark magic that had kept him alive for so long couldn't survive the heart's purifying light. He aged rapidly, decades catching up in seconds. Within moments, there was nothing left but dust. The winter that had gripped Valdoria for 3 years broke. Spring came in an instant, ice melting, flowers blooming, warmth flooding back into the frozen kingdom. Pedro and Morgana stood at the center of it all, still holding hands, still connected by the bond that had saved them both. The kingdom was free. The truth was known. And for the first time in years, hope had returned to Valdoria. The celebration lasted mere hours before reality descended. Pedro stood in the throne room, the heart of light resting on the ancient seat where it belonged, its warm glow filling the chamber. Around him, the council had assembled, nobles, advisors, and court officials who'd spent 3 years believing Morgana was the enemy. Now they looked at her with a mixture of shame and lingering suspicion. "The corruption has been purged," Lord Chancellor Dimitri said carefully. He was an older man, one of the few Pedro remembered his father trusting. "Lord Erebus's network has collapsed. But questions remain, Your Highness. Questions that must be answered before the kingdom can truly heal." Pedro met the man's eyes steadily. "Ask them. You abandoned your post. You defied direct orders. You allied yourself with a wanted criminal." Dimitri's voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "You may have been proven right, but you still committed treason according to our laws. The council must determine what consequences that carries." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled nobles. Anna stood near the throne, her face carefully neutral. Through his bond with Morgana, Pedro felt her anxiety spike. "I understand," Pedro said. "I broke the law to serve a higher truth. That doesn't erase what I did." He turned to face the full council. "But before you pass judgment on me, I ask you to hear Morgana's testimony. Let her speak of what she endured, what she sacrificed. Then decide if my choice to save her was treason or the only honorable path available." The Chancellor hesitated, then nodded. "The Council recognizes Morgana, former keeper of the Heart of Light." Morgana stepped forward, and Pedro felt her fear through their bond. She'd been hunted by these people, condemned without trial, painted as a monster for 3 years. Now she had to face them and ask for understanding. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "3 years ago, I watched Lord Erebus murder the guards protecting the Heart of Light. I saw him begin the ritual that would corrupt its power for his own use. I stopped him, but I couldn't defeat him. His magic was too strong, his influence too deep." She paused. "So I did the only thing I could. I bound the heart to my own soul and fled, buying time for someone to discover the truth." "You could have come to us," one noble protested. "To the council, to the king." Erebus controlled who saw the king. He controlled the flow of information throughout the palace. Any message I sent was intercepted. Any ally I approached was later found dead. Morgana's voice hardened. "I tried. For months I tried. And I watched good people die for attempting to help me. So I stopped trying to fight from within and focused on the only thing that mattered, keeping the heart safe until someone untouched by Erebus's corruption could claim it." "The prince," Anna said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "That's why you led him on the hunt. Why you left traces he could follow. You were testing him, weren't you? Seeing if he'd question what he'd been told or blindly follow orders." Morgana met Anna's eyes. Yes. I needed someone with the Keeper's gift, someone strong enough to survive the ritual. But more than that, I needed someone who could choose truth over comfort. Most people, when faced with evidence that everything they believe is wrong, they reject it. They cling to the lies because change is terrifying. She looked at Pedro. He didn't. When he found me dying in the snow, he made an impossible choice. He chose to see me, not the legend. That's what makes him worthy of being a keeper. The council was silent, processing her words. Finally, the chancellor spoke. The law still demands consequences. Prince Pedro, you committed treason regardless of your motivations. The traditional punishment is execution or permanent exile. He paused. However, given the extraordinary circumstances, the council is willing to offer an alternative. You may keep your life and remain in Valdoria, but you must abdicate your claim to the throne. Your title, your authority, your position as heir, all forfeit. Pedro felt the weight of the decision settle over him. Everything he'd been raised to be, everything his father had prepared him for, stripped away. He'd be a prince in name only, powerless to shape the kingdom's future. Through their bond, Morgana's guilt crashed over him. She thought this was her fault, that he was being punished for saving her. He sent reassurance back through the connection. This was his choice. He'd make it again. I accept the council's terms, Pedro said clearly. I abdicate my claim to the throne. But I request one thing in exchange, that I be allowed to serve as keeper of the Heart of Light alongside Morgana. The kingdom needs protectors who can sense corruption and prevent another Erebus from rising. Let that be my service to Valdoria. The chancellor looked to Anna. As queen, the final decision was hers. She studied Pedro for a long moment, and he saw the grief in her eyes. Their marriage had never been passionate, but they'd been partners in duty. Now even that was ending. The council accepts your request, Anna said formally. Pedro of House Valdoria, you are hereby stripped of your position as crown prince and heir to the throne. You will serve as keeper, bound to the Heart of Light and to the protection of this kingdom. Her voice softened slightly. May you find in this new duty the purpose that eluded you on the throne. Pedro bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. The formal ceremony followed, the removal of his crown, the breaking of his seal, the public announcement that the line of succession had changed. Pedro felt each moment like a physical loss, but also like a weight lifting from his shoulders. He'd never wanted to be king. He'd wanted to matter, to make a difference, to protect people. Now he could do that without the burden of a crown. When it was over, when he stood in the empty throne room with only Morgana beside him, she finally spoke. I'm sorry. I cost you everything. No. Pedro took her hand, and their magic hummed in harmony. You gave me everything that matters. Purpose. Truth. A partner who understands what it means to sacrifice for something greater than yourself. He smiled. I was never meant to be king, Morgana, but I was meant to be a keeper. I understand that now. Through their bond, he felt her emotions shift from guilt to something warmer, something neither of them had named yet, but both recognized. Outside the windows, spring continued its miraculous return. After 3 years of winter, Valdoria was finally healing. And in the throne room, 2 keepers stood together, bound by magic and choice and something deeper than either, ready to face whatever came next. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Captain Aldrich arrived with a group of common citizens, farmers, merchants, craftspeople, all demanding an audience with the council. Pedro and Morgana were summoned to the throne room where Anna sat in judgment, the Heart of Light gleaming beside her. These people claim Lord Erebus victimized them directly, the Chancellor explained. They're demanding restitution and asking that the former prince, he glanced at Pedro, the keeper, rather, investigate the full extent of Erebus's crimes. Pedro stepped forward. Tell me what happened. A woman near the front spoke first, her voice trembling. "My son was taken 2 years ago. Lord Erebus's guards said he showed signs of forbidden magic, that he needed special training. We never saw him again." Tears streamed down her face. "I want to know if he's alive. I want to know what that monster did to him." Others echoed similar stories. Children taken, debts mysteriously accumulating that forced families into servitude, businesses destroyed by sudden legal troubles. A pattern emerged. Erebus had systematically targeted anyone with latent magical ability, or anyone who might question his authority. "The Heart of Light can help," Morgana said quietly. She approached the throne and lifted the crystal carefully. "With your Majesty's permission, I can use it to trace the magical signatures of the missing people. If they're alive, we can find them." Anna nodded. "Do it." Morgana closed her eyes, and the heart blazed with silver light. Through their bond, Pedro felt her consciousness expanding, searching through layers of magic that permeated the kingdom. He joined his power to hers instinctively, and together they dove deeper. What they found made Pedro's blood run cold. "There's a facility," Morgana gasped, "underground beneath the old fortress at Blackmere. Erebus was—" She swayed and Pedro caught her. He was experimenting on them, trying to force magical ability to manifest, to create more hunters he could control. "How many?" Anna demanded. "Dozens. Maybe more." Pedro's voice was hollow. "And they're still there, still trapped. Erebus is dead, but his enchantments remain." The throne room erupted in shouts and cries. Anna raised her hand for silence. "Keepers, can you break these enchantments? Can you free these people?" Pedro and Morgana exchanged glances. Through their bond, they quickly communicated, assessing the difficulty, the risks, the power required. Finally, Pedro nodded. "We can, but we'll need time and resources. The enchantments are complex, designed to kill the prisoners if tampered with incorrectly." He turned to the assembled citizens. "I give you my word, we will bring your families home. All of them, whatever it takes." The woman who'd spoken first approached and took his hand. "Thank you, Keeper. Thank you for seeing the truth when everyone else was blind." Over the following weeks, Pedro and Morgana worked tirelessly. They journeyed to Blackmere and spent days carefully dismantling Erebus's magical traps. The facility was a nightmare. Cells lined with dark enchantments, ritual chambers where innocent people had been tortured in the name of Erebus's experiments. They found 43 survivors. Some were children who'd been taken years ago. Others were adults who'd disappeared more recently. All bore the scars of Erebus's cruelty, both physical and magical. Pedro healed what he could, using the heart's power channeled through his keeper's gift. Morgana worked to break the mental conditioning, to free minds that had been trapped in darkness for so long. Together, they gave these people a chance to reclaim their lives. News of their success spread throughout Valdoria. The former prince and the Forbidden Sorcerer working together to undo the damage of 3 decades of corruption. Public opinion shifted rapidly. Morgana was no longer seen as the witch who'd cursed them, but as the hero who'd protected the heart at terrible personal cost. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. One evening, as Pedro and Morgana returned to the capital, they were approached by a delegation of nobles. Lord Valerius, a powerful landowner, served as their spokesman. "Keeper Pedro, we must speak with you privately." They met in a chamber away from the main palace. Valerius wasted no time with pleasantries. "Your work freeing Erebus's prisoners is commendable, but it's causing problems. These people return with wild stories of magical experimentation, of nobles involved in Erebus's schemes. Accusations are being thrown around carelessly, damaging innocent reputations." Pedro's eyes narrowed. Innocent, or guilty parties trying to cover their tracks? That's precisely the attitude we're concerned about. Valerius leaned forward. You and the witch, the Keeper Morgana, pardon me, have tremendous power now. The people adore you. The Queen defers to your judgment on magical matters. Who's to say you won't become the next Erebus, using that power for your own ends? The Heart of Light judges us, Morgana said coldly. We are bound to it, unable to use our gifts for corruption without it burning the darkness from us. That's what being a keeper means, accepting a power that won't allow abuse. So you say, but we have only your word for that. Pedro felt anger rising. These nobles hadn't fought Erebus, hadn't risked anything to expose the truth. Now they complained because the revelation of corruption threatened their comfortable positions. Through their bond, he felt Morgana's calming influence. She was right. Losing his temper would only prove Valerius's point. What do you want? Pedro asked evenly. Oversight. A council position to monitor keeper activities. Someone to ensure you're truly serving the kingdom's interests and not your own. You mean someone to interfere when we expose corruption you'd rather keep hidden. Valerius's smile was thin. I mean protection for the innocent against false accusations driven by magical visions that may or may not be accurate. The meeting ended without resolution, but Pedro knew this wasn't over. Erebus was gone, but the systems he'd built, the corrupt networks he'd fostered, still existed. Rooting them out would mean challenging powerful people who'd benefited from his regime. That night, in the chambers they'd been given within the palace, Morgana asked the question that had been hovering between them. Are you having second thoughts? About giving up the throne? About becoming a keeper? If you'd remain prince, you'd have the authority to simply order these nobles to submit to investigation. Pedro considered this. Through their bond, Morgana felt his contemplation, his weighing of options. As prince, I would have had to play their political games. Make compromises, trade favors, slowly maneuver them into positions where I could act. He met her eyes. As keeper, I can simply tell the truth and let the heart judge. It's cleaner, more honest. He smiled slightly. And I have a partner who understands this work in ways I never could alone. Partners, Morgana repeated softly. Is that what we are? What else would we be? She didn't answer immediately. Through their bond, Pedro felt her emotions swirling, gratitude, affection, fear of naming what was growing between them. I don't know, she finally admitted. But I know that when Erebus fell, when you could have returned to your old life, you chose this instead. Chose to stay bound to me, to share the burden of protecting the heart. She touched his hand. Why? Pedro intertwined his fingers with hers, feeling the familiar hum of their magic harmonizing. Because being with you feels right. Like I've finally found the purpose I was meant for. He paused. And because somewhere between finding you dying in the snow and standing here now, I stopped seeing you as the enemy or even as just an ally. I started seeing you as... He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. Morgana's smile was sad and knowing. We have time to figure out what we are to each other. The bond isn't going anywhere. Neither are we. Time, Pedro agreed. And work. So much work. Outside their window, the city of Valdoria gleamed in the moonlight, finally free of its frozen shroud. Spring had fully arrived, bringing new growth and new hope, but also new challenges. Erebus was gone, but his legacy remained. And two keepers bound together by magic and choice would face it together. Whatever the cost. 6 months passed. Under the keeper's guidance, Valdoria transformed. The Heart of Light, restored to its rightful place, radiated power throughout the kingdom. Crops flourished in soil that had been frozen for years. Villages that had been abandoned were reoccupied and rebuilt. The population, which had dwindled during the endless winter, began to recover. But the work of rooting out Erebus's remaining corruption proved harder than anyone anticipated. Many nobles had benefited from his regime, either knowingly or unknowingly. Untangling 3 decades of manipulation required patience, wisdom, and the careful application of the heart's truth-revealing power. Pedro and Morgana worked tirelessly, traveling from province to province, using their combined magic to identify corrupted officials and dark enchantments. They freed dozens more of Erebus's victims, exposed corrupt magistrates, and slowly rebuilt the kingdom's magical infrastructure. The people loved them. Songs were written about the prince who'd given up his crown for truth and the forbidden sorcerer who'd saved them all. Children played games where they pretended to be keepers, hunting imaginary villains. But in the palace, tension grew. Queen Anna ruled well. She was intelligent, fair, and genuinely cared for her people. But she had no heir, and the council pressured her constantly to remarry. The kingdom needed stability, they argued. A clear line of succession. Anna resisted. She'd married Pedro out of duty, and had no desire to repeat that loveless arrangement. But the political pressure was relentless. One evening, she summoned Pedro and Morgana to a private audience. "I need your counsel," she said without preamble. "The council wants me to choose a new consort. They've presented several candidates, all noble, all politically advantageous, all completely uninspiring." She paced the chamber. "But there's another option they haven't considered. One that would solve multiple problems at once." Pedro felt a spike of apprehension. "What option?" Anna turned to face them. "You, Pedro. Not as king, you've abdicated that right, but as prince consort. We could remarry, produce an heir, stabilize the succession." Through his bond with Morgana, Pedro felt her emotions crash like a wave, shock, hurt, fear that he might agree. "Anna," he said carefully, "we divorced for a reason. Our marriage was a political arrangement that neither of us wanted. Why would we repeat that mistake? Because the kingdom needs it. Because the council won't stop pressuring me until I provide an heir. Because—" She sighed. "Because you're one of the few men I trust completely, and at least with you, I'd know what I was getting. You'd be miserable. So would I. Yes. But we'd be miserable in service to something greater than ourselves. Isn't that what being a keeper taught you?" The words stung because they held truth. Sacrifice for the greater good was precisely what Pedro had learned. But this felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. Morgana spoke for the first time. "Your Majesty, may I ask a question?" Anna nodded. "Do you love him? Not as a friend or a trusted ally, but as a woman loves a man." The question hung in the air. Anna's expression softened. "No. I care for Pedro deeply, but I've never been in love with him. I don't think I'm capable of that kind of passion." She smiled sadly. "I'm too practical, too focused on duty. Love seems like an indulgence I can't afford." "Then you deserve better than another loveless marriage," Morgana said firmly. "And so does he. The kingdom needs an heir, yes. But it also needs leaders who haven't sacrificed every part of themselves to duty. Otherwise, what are we protecting? A kingdom of hollow people going through the motions?" Anna was silent for a long moment. Finally, she laughed, a real, genuine sound. "You're right. Gods, you're absolutely right." She looked at Pedro. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It was unfair to both of you." "What will you tell the council?" Pedro asked. "The truth. That I'll marry when and if I find someone worth marrying. And if that never happens, the council can choose an heir from the extended royal family." Her expression turned mischievous. "Besides, if the kingdom needs keepers to produce the next generation, perhaps that responsibility falls to you too, not me." Pedro felt heat rise to his face. Through their bond, Morgana's embarrassment mirrored his own. We haven't." He stammered. "I have eyes, Pedro. I see how you look at each other, how you move in perfect synchronization. How your magic intertwines so seamlessly it's like watching one person instead of two. Anna's smile was knowing. The bond you share is deeper than any marriage vow. Why not acknowledge it? After they left the Queen's chambers, Pedro and Morgana walked through the palace gardens in silence. Spring flowers bloomed everywhere, their fragrance sweet on the warm air. 6 months ago, this same garden had been buried under feet of snow. "She's not wrong," Morgana said finally, "about how we look at each other." Pedro stopped walking. "No, she's not." "So what are we going to do about it?" The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. They were bound by the soul bond, yes. They worked together perfectly, understood each other deeply. But acknowledging romantic feelings would change everything, would make their partnership more complex, more vulnerable. "I don't know," Pedro admitted. "I just know that when I imagine my future, you're in it. Always. As my partner, my equal." He took her hand. "As more than that, if you want." Morgana looked at their joined hands, at the way golden and silver light flickered where their skin touched. "I spent 3 years alone, convinced I'd die without ever being seen as anything but a monster. You changed that. You saw me, the real me, and you chose to fight beside me rather than against me." Her voice dropped. "I don't have experience with this, with caring for someone this much. It terrifies me." "Me too." Pedro drew her closer. "But I've learned that the things worth doing are usually terrifying. Saving you was terrifying. Exposing Erebus was terrifying. Giving up my crown was terrifying. And all of those turned out to be the best decisions I ever made. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop pretending this is just a magical bond or a working partnership. I'm suggesting we acknowledge that somewhere between that cave and this garden, I fell in love with you." He cupped her face gently. "And I think you feel the same." Through their bond, there was no hiding her answer. Joy flooded through the connection, mixed with relief and fear and hope. "I do," she whispered. "I love you. I probably have since you chose to save me instead of kill me. But I didn't think I had the right to say it. You gave up so much already." He kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, their first kiss despite months of being bound together. And the moment their lips met, their magic exploded. Golden and silver light blazed around them, intertwining so completely they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The garden bloomed even more vibrantly, responding to the pure joy of their connection. Throughout the capital, people looked up as they felt a wave of warmth and hope wash over them, though they didn't understand its source. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Well," Morgana managed, "that was overwhelming. I was going to say perfect." Pedro laughed, and the sound was lighter than he could remember feeling in years. "So we're doing this. Really doing this. We're already bound for life. Might as well acknowledge that we're bound by choice, not just magic." She smiled. Besides, Anna was right. If the kingdom needs keepers to carry on the legacy, someone has to take responsibility for that. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we have time to figure it out. To build something real between us, not rushed or forced." Her expression turned serious. "But yes, someday. When we're ready, I'd like to build a future with you. A real one." Standing in the garden where winter had once reigned, surrounded by new growth and possibility, Pedro pulled Morgana close. Through their bond, he felt her certainty matching his own. They'd both given up everything they thought they wanted. And in return, they'd found something infinitely more valuable. Purpose, partnership, and love that had been forged in the fires of impossible choices. The kingdom was healing. Erebus's corruption was being systematically purged. And two keepers stood together, no longer hunting each other, but building something new. Something worth fighting for.